meet you where you've been. I can show you some terrible things, illegal weapons, burning skin. Look at this and you think, oh my God, look at that state. All the folks they've displaced, they want bombs, so we play. Hey.
So I'm curious, what's your opinion? What's your take on these like pop star musicians, many of whose songs you're recreating, staying silent on this issue?
Yeah, I think they do have a responsibility to speak up. I think it's a total waste of a platform. I think if you have a platform, you have a privilege. And if you're not using it, you're basically going ahead with the status quo, which is harm. And that's why, sometimes a comment that I get a lot is, well, why are you covering this person's song? They haven't said anything. They don't even deserve the cover. And I'm like, well, if they're not going to speak up, we're going to speak up for them. Because I want them to see, I don't know if Taylor Swift has seen that video. Like there's probably there's over 8 million views of that video and people have tagged her left and right. So I don't know if she's seen it, but she's still choosing to say nothing. So I'm here like, hey, Taylor, what's up? You have anything to say? Because her fans are begging her to speak up.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rania Khalek, and this is Dispatches. There are so many talented people who care about liberation and justice. And in the era of Israel's genocide in Gaza, those who care have used their skills in beautiful and inspiring ways to help bring attention to the struggle for justice in Palestine. One of those people is musician Leila Hegazy, an Egyptian Italian-American solo artist and activist, as well as a member of the twin sister duo Hegazy. Leila has been putting her stunning voice to use for Palestine, adapting popular songs to help those of us in the pro-Palestine movement feel seen as we battle the absurdity of the occupation and Western propaganda. She's currently working on a protest album for Palestine and plans to donate the proceeds to the Palestine Children's Relief Fund. And she joins me today. But before we jump into it, this is just the first half of this episode. The second half is available for Breakthrough News members only. You can become a member at patreon.com/breakthrough news. And as always, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell so you get a notification whenever we post new content. And if you appreciate this show, you can also donate below on YouTube. Leila, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
It's so good to have you on. I have been, as I was telling you before we started recording, I've been so unbelievably impressed with the content you've been putting out, the various pop songs that you've been recreating for this horrific genocide in Gaza. But it's been so important, I think, for people to have that to sort of lean on in this moment. And for those who aren't familiar with what you've been doing or haven't heard your incredible singing voice, I actually want to, before I get started with asking you various questions, I want to show a clip from one of the songs that you did that you basically adapted to what's happening in Gaza. So I'm going to make you watch yourself for a moment. This is actually one of my favorites because I'm like such a sucker for pop songs. And who doesn't love Britney Spears? And you did Baby One More Time and you created a version of it for what's happening in Gaza. So let's take a listen to that and then we can go from there.
Oh, Biden, you people want you to know that you are fucking up here. Oh, Biden, you're criminal and it shows. No re-election this year, screw you and your good friend baby. While we're at it, fuck you PM Sunak and Trudeau. Your cowardice is cringeworthy. You lying terrorists, you're killing babies just for greed. Hands off of Yemen, they have a spine. You should resign. We all stand with Palestine.
All right. So that was absolutely incredible. I must have watched it a million times. And I showed it to everyone I know and they were also watching it. So I guess a good place to start now that we've established that you're like incredibly talented is tell me first about your professional background, because I think it's very cool how many people are skilled and talented in so many different ways and have really honed in those skills and talents to push to give attention to what's happening in Palestine.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so I'm a musician. I've been a musician all my life. I'm also a teacher. I teach voice and piano lessons for a living, so that's my main living. I do record and play music with my band. That's with my twin sister. That's called Hegazy. It's named after our dad, so that's our last name. But yeah, I think I'm just kind of a regular person, and music is how I cope. Although, I have to be honest, like in the first month or so of this genocide, I think I was too paralyzed to do much of anything, but maybe even more than that, even longer than that. But once Christmas time came around, I was just watching everybody kind of, going on like business as usual. And somehow I started singing Christmas songs, but with lyrics about Gaza. And then it sort of just like spun into this thing where now we're adapting pop songs and trying to get people's attention and make them care. I don't know if that was my initial goal at the time. I think it was just me venting my rage, and then people started listening, and that things changed from there.
That's so incredible. And also, so this reminds me, I'm not a musically talented person. I'm very envious of people who are. My niece, actually, she sings, she writes songs, and it's like an art. I mean, I assume it's probably similar for you. This is your art. So it totally makes sense that there would be this horrible thing happening in the background that is, devastating you, and you would put it into use this way. I mean, did you expect the reaction you've gotten? Because I think really like it's in moments like this, we need that sort of thing just to know that there's people who agree with us. And also I don't know, watching your songs makes me feel good. I'm like, right on. So
Thanks
did you
for
expect
that.
the reaction?
Yeah, absolutely not. Because, to be honest, when I first started, nobody was listening, because that's how it is on Instagram and on TikTok. I'm still heavily shadow banned on TikTok. So it's really weird because my videos are going viral when other people repost them, but not from my page directly. It's very interesting. Yeah. So at first, no one was listening. Then I was on the wrong side of the algorithm. So I got like hate all day long. And then somehow at some point it kind of flipped, so that the right people were finding it. And I've gotten a lot of messages from people just saying that they feel really seen right now, because I guess they are feeling like I was feeling, like nobody cares. And how are people just going on business as usual when there's an actual genocide going on? So I guess I've somehow accidentally figured out that this is my role in the resistance, just like holding the resistance up so that they can keep the fight going, because it is hard and you feel really lonely supporting Palestine.
Well, so that's something else I'm curious about. So tell me a bit about your personal background, because I think it's very so you're Egyptian, Italian American. So those are a lot of different identities in one. So my family is Lebanese. I grew up in the US. I'm American as well. But obviously, I'm not obviously, but for me, growing up Lebanese and having a very politicized family, like I grew up going to rallies for Palestine. I grew up, with Israel bombing my relatives. I grew up with an understanding that this is not a very nice country that is supported by our tax dollars. And, later on as an adult, I started to understand settler colonialism and all of, that side of things, and how there's this is an imperialist problem and all that sort of imperialist understanding of Israel. But I guess everyone has their journey. I'm curious, since you come from an Egyptian background, is this something you grew up understanding? Is this something you understood as an adult? Is there a certain political background that you've kind of always had or had an evolution towards? Tell me about your personal political journey when it comes to Palestine.
It's been interesting. I mean, I think every Arab American to some extent sort of grows up in this struggle, and I think kind of always knows a little bit about it. Even if you're too young to understand at the time, you understand that there's just pain around this issue. I remember the first time, I went to a restaurant and saw the words Israeli salad on a menu, and my dad got it's something that you don't have to be Palestinian for that to hit, because it's cultural theft, right? I mean, we're making this salad all over the Middle East, and somehow this, settler colonial state is taking credit for it. It's just very bizarre. And I don't think I understood all those pieces when I was young, but yeah, my dad was old enough to remember when Egypt was at war with Israel and was, really came from that struggle to an extent. And as everybody in the Middle East kind of understands it, even though the Arab countries, haven't exactly been best friends to the Palestinians as far as their governments, the people have always supported Palestine, and that goes without saying. So, I think as I got older and my political views started to take shape, I understood this for what it was. And just from like an anti-colonial background, and everything really started to come together for me in, I want to say, the bombing campaign that took place in Gaza in 2014, 2013. So I remember that specifically, that was the thing that really lit the fire under me, that I just felt so much rage. And I just watched all my American friends, fellow American friends, but, non-Arab friends, I should say, kind of just turn a blind eye or accept whatever the media was saying. And I remember too being a child and watching coverage of Israel's war with Lebanon and watching this sort of very quick footnote of the insane number of casualties of Lebanese people kind of flash through the bottom of the screen, like just a quick moving footnote, while, the Israelis killed, and there were far fewer of them, of course, were, we were seeing their pictures, we were hearing about them nonstop, 24/7. And I think in those moments, and there's so many that I can speak to, but it was in those moments that I really realized, like, even as a half Arab person, because the other side of my family is Italian, and, being mixed is always an interesting thing where you almost feel like you don't really fit in with either side enough. Like, you're not Arab enough, you're not Italian, you're not anything enough. You're just sort of your own species. But I remember really, like in those moments where I'm watching Arab lives just get devalued, it's in those moments that you feel Arab, right? I mean, and anyone who is of a mixed identity will tell you that if they come from any identity that's marginalized in any way.
Yeah, and those are such important points, especially the idea of, if you're Arab American and growing up in any Arab capacity in the US, half, full, quarter, whatever, if it's a part of your identity in any way, this touches you, because all of the dehumanizing racist tropes that are used against Palestinians apply to us. And also, we've watched the entire war on terror and all those tropes being used against Arabs more generally. So it feels very personal. It feels incredibly personal. And I mean, I remember that 2006 war on Lebanon. My family, actually, my dad and my little sister were visiting that summer, and they got stuck here. I'm in Lebanon now, so that's why I'm saying here, but like they got stuck here, and it was really scary. And I think that was one of the first times when I really recognized, looking at the coverage, I'm just like, what the hell is this? Like, all these people have died. I'm terrified for my relatives, and Israelis are the victims. And yeah, every single war on Gaza completely radicalized me more and more each and every time. But, I'm curious for you now. I think you're based in New York, and I don't know. Did you grow up in New York, by the way?
Mostly, yeah. So I've been here pretty much since I was young. I mean, I was born in California, but I was really young when we moved, and my whole life has been here.
Okay, so like you've been an Arab in New York, and 9/11 happened in New York, and there's been all these wars on Middle Eastern countries, and you were in New York. And so when you look at all of those periods of time and the atmosphere that ends up getting created around, anti-Arab hate, and what that ends up looking like, what was it like post October 7th? I was not in the US post October 7th. I was in Lebanon. So I have no idea, but I'm just curious for you, and just generally being around that atmosphere, like what has that been like? Because the hate that I'm seeing in the media, the hate that I'm seeing displayed by our politicians seems really insane and kind of scary.
It is. It really is. And, it's interesting because when I was 11 years old, that's when 9/11 happened. It was 2001. And I feel like with the whole war on terror, I was old enough to understand that, at 11 years old, it's a pretty heavy thing to understand, that we were the enemy, right? Like, it just, my neighbor's tone, in the neighborhood, it just totally changed. I remember going to our local deli and there were literally pictures of dead Arab people on the walls. I mean, it was horrific. And then now, I'm 33 and I'm seeing a lot of similar language being used, but now I'm old enough to really fully understand all the lies, the degree to which the media lies, which is really horrifying. In order to manufacture consent for genocide. When I was younger, I remember everybody just so ready to go to war and sort of in this revenge mindset, right? And now it's really, really scary being 33 years old and fully kind of, I want to say reliving this again, but with more understanding of all the racism and just normalized Islamophobia that exists in America and just within our political discourse, where even saying free Palestine gets you labeled an anti-Semite. But when we come out and we're in support of a free Palestinian state, somehow we're anti-Semitic and we're all of these things. And it's racism is what it is, because they're never called anti-Palestinian. They're never called anti-Arab. All the things that they're just allowed to say brazenly, right? That, we have to tiptoe, we have to be so careful about the way that we speak. And yet, they can kind of they have free reign to say almost anything with complete impunity, which is really scary.
It reminds me of that guy who worked for the Obama State Department, whose name I don't remember, and I don't even want to remember his name, but I'm sure everybody knows what I'm about to say. The one who was going around New York City to street cart vendors, specifically Arab ones, in one case, an Egyptian one who videotaped him, just completely harassing and saying the most racist, insane things. It was at that point, it had only been 4,000 Palestinian children who'd been killed in Gaza. And I say only because now it's over 12,000 that we know of. Jesus, that's 3 times. I can't. Anyways, the point is he was saying these horrific racist things that were so blatantly genocidal. He was ultimately arrested, but charges were dropped. The Biden administration never had to denounce him. This guy's going to be fine. It's fine. It's there's no limit for what you can say about Arabs, about Palestinians. And it's been a very eye-opening experience for me, just to see how far these people, some of whom are supposedly Democrats, are willing to go in their insane support for literally just extinguishing the lives of over 10,000 babies. All that said, I wanted to segue with something real quick. I want to ask you about the music industry. But before I do, I want to play another one of your songs. And this is, okay, so I have been made fun of on the show by my co-host for our weekly live stream, Eugene Perrier, for how much I like Taylor Swift songs. I really do love the most generic pop music. And I actually think that I really do like Taylor Swift. And you did a version of Blank Space that is so good. I'm going to play it and then we're going to talk about something tangentially related.
Nice to meet you where you've been. I can show you some terrible things. Illegal weapons, burning skin. Look at this and you think, oh my God, look at that state. All the folks they've displaced, they want bombs, so we pay. Hey, your money funding crimes all over the Middle East. Ain't it funny how they lie? They don't care about you, so hey, let's be friends. Fight like hell till this shit ends. Grab your bullhorn and take my hand. We can make the bad guys scared on the weekend. This ain't gonna be forever. Occupation's going down in flames. 'Cause one day when this is over, they're gonna hang their heads in shame. Colonizing motherfuckers will say that we're to blame. 'Cause you know they pay naysayers and their support is fake. 'Cause they're dumb and they're reckless. They took this way too far, leaving little kids legless. And with some nasty scars, killing babies and their mothers has got the world away. But we got a good case, baby, and they're gonna pay.
So good. Oh my gosh, that version is so much better. And so Excellent job. But I guess, okay, so I wanted to ask you after, raising this better version of Taylor Swift's song that you did, when it comes to the idea of musicians in particular speaking out, there has been a lot of outrage about some of these really big pop stars failing to speak out on Palestine. I mean, there's been some others who have spoken out in favor of Israel's genocide, but for the most part, a lot of them have been quite silent. And, there's two opinions here, and I kind of go back and forth. There's the one opinion of, should we really expect these people to speak out on every topic that exists, right? Like, do we even want them to? Because sometimes their opinions really suck. On the other hand, they have these massive platforms. Some of them claim to be quite liberal or progressive. They claim to care about human rights. They've spoken out against other wars before, completely silent on this genocide. So I'm curious, what's your opinion? What's your take on these like pop star musicians, many of whose songs you're recreating, staying silent on this issue?
Yeah. Well, my take on it is that everyone with a platform has a responsibility to speak up. And that's why, sometimes a comment that I get a lot is, well, why are you covering this person's song? They haven't said anything. They don't even deserve the cover. And I'm like, well, if they're not going to speak up, we're going to speak up for them. Because I want them to see, I don't know if Taylor Swift has seen that video. Like there's probably there's over 8 million views of that video and people have tagged her left and right. So I don't know if she's seen it, but she's still choosing to say nothing. So I'm here like, hey, Taylor, what's up? You have anything to say? Because her fans are begging her to speak up. And I think at the end of the day, it goes to show kind of what we were talking about before, where when people are killed, I don't even want to say they die because they're killed, who are Arab, it just will never spark the same outrage in Western pop culture. And that's exactly what we're seeing. Because if these victims, during the war in Ukraine, and which is still going on, of course, but, people were so quick to come out in support of Ukraine, in support of innocent civilians. We see this over and over and over again with pretty much every people except Arab people. And it's just something that, I'm personally really sick of. So yeah, I think they do have a responsibility to speak up. I think it's a total waste of a platform. I think if you have a platform, you have a privilege. And if you're not using it, you're basically going ahead with the status quo, which is harm. So that's my stance.
Absolutely. And, to add on to what you're saying, I mean, some of these people we're talking about what do they say about Taylor Swift? Her Eras tour basically contributed a huge amount apparently to the American economy because it was so massive. I mean, Selena Gomez is huge. All of these major celebrities are such big brands in and of themselves. They're not risking that much. I mean, maybe that's unfair for me to say. I don't know. But they have so much that it's not like they're going to lose it all. And even if they lost a lot, they still have so much that it just seems incredibly, if the reason is because they're scared to speak out against the genocide because of the Israel lobby, which I understand is a real fear. Okay. But there's people who have way more to lose than you and they speak out. So, Taylor Swift is going to be fine if the Israel lobby attacks her. I'm certain she's got a PR team that will go into full force. She's still going to be a 100 millionaire. People are still going to listen to her songs. They're still going to buy her albums. She'd probably be more beloved in the Middle East if she spoke out, actually. And then I look at other people who have, I'm sorry, if you want to add to that, please go ahead.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I think the thing that people really don't seem to understand is that solidarity does often mean giving up something. I think people think solidarity is like, oh, let me just kind of, donate money in silence and maybe have tough conversations and where only my closest family members or friends can hear. And it's like, okay, well, that's great. And I'm not saying that doesn't matter, but yeah, everybody knows where they have the most power and influence. And if they're choosing not to use that is a very intentional choice. So that's my 2 cents on that.
And then to add, just the other side to that too, is there are people who are sacrificing, who have a lot more to lose. And when I say that, I mean, there's people who aren't as famous as Taylor Swift, who are putting themselves in a position where you're going to lose jobs, you're going to lose friends, you're going to lose opportunities, and you don't have $100 million to land on. And so to bring it back to you and what you're doing, you do work, you said like you do vocal lessons, you do music lessons, and you obviously like create your own music. And we can talk more about that in a bit, because I know you and your, which I think is very cool, twin sister. It's really cool that you have a twin. Have a band together. But I'm curious if this has, like, what have been the consequences for you? Have there been any consequences? Have you lost friends? Have you lost work? Are there any opportunities you don't get to have because of your using your platform to speak out on what, gets people in a lot of trouble if they're against Israel?
It's a good question. Well, so I did lose a student over this, who I had for 7 years, which was really devastating for me, particularly because, I tried to talk to her mother like a rational person. And, basically she cursed me out all over my page. And this was even before I started posting songs. Like, it was just basically, I posted this thing about, I guess, it was pretty controversial, but I was making infographics. And, I posed the question, well, does Israel actually have a right to exist? And what does that mean? And why is that a colonial question that we need to throw out the window? Because no, settler colonial states don't have the right to exist. And, the fact that we even think they do is extremely racist. And anyway, so she didn't like that very much. Her whole stance was, well, you hate white people, because we were talking about, the post was about white supremacy culture. And I get that comment a lot, by the way. I just want to say that, well, you must hate white people. Why do you hate white people so much? And it's like, well, I never actually said that. And also, white supremacy is a system. It's just people hear these things and they take them so personally, as if, you're talking about them. And whereas it's really just a greater system that we're trying to call into question. So yeah, I mean, that was really sad for me. I really wonder about that girl. And if one day, when she's a little bit older, maybe if she learns a little bit more, like, will she understand why I'm no longer her teacher? Like, part of me hopes that she hears this video, that she sees this video and asks her mother about it, and her mother threatened to sue me, by the way.
Wait, I'm sorry. On what grounds? Like, what?
I'm not sure. I remember texting her back, like, because she said, see you in court. And I said, you can't sue me for my political views. And it was just so strange. But I think, I don't know if she wanted to like sue me for every dollar she ever paid me in the past over 7 years. But I haven't heard from her attorney or anything. But yeah, so that was I think the biggest loss, just in the sense of, this was a child that I had a really good relationship with, voice and piano, an hour a week for 7 years. And like, she's no longer my student. But other than that, I have to say everyone around me has been really supportive, which is really wonderful. Like, I teach at a yoga studio. I'm a yoga teacher as well. And, I love my boss there so much, because I hate to even call her my boss, because she's like my friend, but she's so wonderful. And, she puts up all of the Palestine literature. Like, if we're having an event, like, she'll put it on the bulletin board, and like, she's posting about Palestine on like the studio's page. And so, there's a lot of really redeeming moments too, like even in the loss. So, I'm also kind of lucky because I work mostly for myself. So I can kind of do what I want. That's the beauty of being self-employed, is you kind of make your own rules. And it's like, well, if you don't want to support my business, fine.
Go find another one. Go find another one that loves genocide.
Exactly.
So I want you to elaborate a bit on the redeeming qualities, in the sense of, I was in the States last month, and I mean, as horrifying as it's been to watch like all our political leadership and all the media just be disgustingly racist and pro-genocide, something on the ground feels different. Something among people feels different, especially in New York. I mean, in New York, it seems kind of like the leadership is all pro-Israel. And I know there's certain like maybe areas of New York, maybe the richer ones, where people are going to be just like disgusting imperialists all across the board. But for the most part, there was like a protest every weekend. There was shut it down events all the time. People are wearing their keffiyehs. There's Palestine flags. There's Free Gaza graffiti. And so I was impressed to see that. So I'm curious if you feel like there's a shift in the US. I mean, polls do show that a majority of people in the country want to see a ceasefire. There was another poll like last month that showed that like 50% of Democrat voters believe this to be a genocide, which I think is pretty huge and different than what you would typically see. So are you seeing that reflected in the atmosphere around you?
Yes, absolutely. And I think the biggest difference is that, when I was younger, it was mostly Arab Americans who cared, Arab Americans around me, at least in New York. And now it's not just Arab Americans. We're seeing, and the movement has always been very multiracial. And, there have always been different people of different backgrounds, including Jewish folks. I have to say that, like, Jewish folks have been the biggest allies in support of Palestine. But something feels really different where people who didn't know about this issue before have suddenly been educated very quickly. And I think the biggest determining factor in how someone views this issue is, do they watch cable news or not? Because at the end of the day, it's sort of like, it's become almost like a generational thing where the older generation is sort of still, unfortunately drinking the Kool-Aid because of their, I want to say, dependence on cable news, to tell the truth. Although, I'm shocked even to see like CNN actually sometimes reporting how horrible the conditions in Gaza are, despite all the horrific coverage in the past and present. So something really does feel different where it's not just like Arabs who care. And like, that's the biggest thing. Cause I just remember, and I'm sure so many people feel this way who are of a similar background. I remember feeling like the only person who really cared. And, just whenever I would talk about it, just sort of being labeled like angry. I mean, that's like another racialized thing. And
it's like, you're so emotional. Stop being such an emotional Arab woman. Like, yeah.
Or like, oh, you only care because you're Arab and you're Muslim. Like, you only care because it's Muslim. Like, I still get that comment a lot. Like, people will like go back through like my whole profile and like, well, why didn't you talk more about Ukraine? And why didn't you talk about this? And I'm like, well, first of all, I don't owe you anything. And number two, the reason I speak out about Palestine, and a lot of us make a point to, is because this is the issue that has been so taboo that you can't touch it. And that's why it's particularly important. No one is going to come at you for supporting Ukraine. No one is going to come at you for supporting, for speaking out about what's going on in Congo or Sudan, right? Like, but when you talk about Palestine, like, that's what makes you lose your job. And that's why I feel particularly, especially growing up sort of in the struggle, understanding it, compelled to speak out about it, right? I mean, it's not, this issue really is its own thing to an extent in the way that it exists as like discourse, within American politics.
Also, this is literally, we are funding it. Like, it's like, that's the other thing. It's our, like, tax season is around the corner. I think it's like in March, right? That's like this coming month, next month. Literally all my time, like growing up, my dad would just curse every year. Like, I have to pay these taxes to fund Israel's destruction of Palestine. And it's real. And it's not just Arabs who have to pay taxes to do that. It is all of us. Like, this is America's genocide. Unlike, I mean, you could definitely connect America absolutely to what's happening with Ukraine, Russia, with Congo, with Sudan. But this is so explicit and clear. And then there's also the fact that I would like to think that even if I was not of Arab descent, I would be very upset that so many babies are being just chopped into pieces by bombs funded by my taxes. Like, it's pretty basic, you guys. And speaking of, you would. And it's also like, one thing I will say that I found interesting is I do see these, I always appreciate it. I see these videos of very angry white people, angry for the right reasons, who are just like, I hate Israel. And I'm like, you get it now too. And another part of it too is the Israelis are just like posting how insane they are on the internet for everyone to see, which I really appreciate them doing. I mean, look, if you're going to commit your horrific war crimes, I'm glad that you're being honest about why you're doing it. It's disgusting to watch, but it's a very revealing moment for people who didn't grow up seeing it happen all the time. But to speak of the people that I'm the angriest at right now, that would be people like Joe Biden and the entire Democratic Party, who has proven that they literally don't care if people like us live or die. It seems like they'd even prefer if we died. And so I want to segue into that with another one of your excellent songs. And this is also just reminds me of when I was a kid, because I remember this was like Destiny's Child, Jumpin'. Came out, and I still think of my childhood when this song comes on. So here we go.
Democrats be thinking we're dumb, acting like they're holy just because they're not Trump. But they all be funding wars with their friends, cause the money's dirty and the stocks are jumping.
It's so freaking brilliant, and it sounds really good. And so, with that in mind, we're in an election year. We're already being told, vote blue no matter who. Do you want Trump to be president? Like, who cares what Biden's doing in Gaza? Trump is worse. So, yeah, I want to hear what your take on this is. I mean, you also are somebody who lives in a very blue state, so you have more freedom to vote for whoever you want without being accused of getting Trump elected. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the Democratic Party after October 7th?
Oh, such a loaded question. I mean, my faith in the Democratic Party has been, I want to say, was murdered a long time ago, but especially in light of everything that's happening, I've never seen Arab life, or I guess maybe, again, I'm just old enough now to understand how cheap Arab life is to the Democratic Party. And there is no way on earth that I would ever vote for a Democrat ever again, no matter what kind of false moral equivalency people like to draw. I mean, at the end of the day, what's worse than genocide? Like, I just really want to know, because, okay, we understand Trump is a psychopath. Like, I'm not saying that I think he's a wonderful person and I want to have coffee with him next week. Like, nobody's saying that, it's like, it's just sort of this either or thinking, I think, that gets us really stuck. And it's like, well, okay, what's worse than genocide? What could possibly be worse? Because if you don't draw the line there, where exactly do you draw it? I mean, at some point, you just have to take a stand and realize that these parties, both of them, have been extorting us for many, many, many years. And there's never been a better example than sort of what is happening right now. I mean, if you can be pressured into voting for a genocidal war criminal just because the other guy is worse, the system is fundamentally broken. And I just feel that to even participate in it is just perpetuating harm, and I won't do it anymore. And people, it's when people criticize us for taking this stand, I think what they don't realize is we've voted for the lesser evil before. Like, this isn't new. Like, we're new to all the arguments. We're not new to all the arguments that people make for voting lesser evil, quote unquote, lesser evil. But there's no way you could ever argue that Joe Biden is a lesser evil. He's, if killing 30,000 people, and more really, because there's still so many people under the rubble and we can't actually properly calculate the numbers. If that's not enough to make you withdraw support from a candidate, I just don't know what is. Because at the end of the day, if it were 30,000 white people, this would not be a discussion.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. And who has been really disappointing? I mean, I feel like I've been disappointed in her entire career, but I still continue to be disappointed, is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who has come out repeatedly and just been like, yeah, we got to still vote for Joe Biden. And I'm like, you're really not going to use any of your leverage? Like, what is the point of even being in this party as a quote unquote progressive if you're just going to be on board with everything? And you're right. They're always like, oh no, but Trump is the worst case scenario. I think that genocide might be the worst case scenario. Like, and yes, can things get worse? I mean, they can always get worse. Sure. But does that mean so my choices are genocide or potentially worse, like as in what, more genocide? Like, I don't understand what does that mean for my choices? I guess some people will be like, oh, but Trump wants to put Arabs in camps or something. And I mean, that's really horrible. That if Trump wants to put Arabs in camps, it's really horrible. I guess then it becomes an issue of if you're okay with putting Arabs in camps in the Middle East versus if you're okay with doing it in the US. And then I'm just kind of like, I don't even know. I don't know where to go with that.
Right.
I don't know where to go.
Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence for that? Because we have direct evidence. It's not conjecture that Joe Biden is complicit in genocide. So,
Yeah.
you can get into all the hypotheticals you want about what Trump wants to do, but we can look at what Joe Biden has actually done. And, I think this whole discourse just proves that, the idea that you can disrupt the Democratic Party and cause change from within, I think people are really seeing that idea fall to pieces right now because, these so-called progressive candidates, no matter how good their intentions are going in, once they get there, they're having their arms twisted behind their backs and they have to bow to Western interests to keep their jobs. And at the end of the day, it's a signifier of what the system really is and the limits of it, right? So I don't know that it's even about individual people or their intentions. It's really about the system and what it is designed to do. It's working exactly how it was designed to work. And I think people really need to understand that.
No, I think it's a really good point. It's kind of like if you go into the party thinking you're going to change it, it doesn't work like that. It changes you. Whether you like it or not, it'll change you. You're not,
otherwise you're out.
Yeah. You're not strong enough. Like you're not strong enough. Does that mean I hate anybody who's in it? Actually, almost I do at this point. But I mean, good luck to you if you want to try, but I'm not seeing anybody try. That's the problem is none of the people who claim to be going in to try. None of them are. None of them are doing what they're supposed to be doing. So I just you're absolutely right. It's a system that's designed to do exactly what it's doing. Bernie Sanders has been a massive disappointment. I'll say that. But I wanted to also ask you about the issue of the Israelis. I had mentioned that I feel the Israelis are doing us such a service by putting up these insane videos on TikToks where they in this really egomaniacal, psychotic way celebrate the horrors they're committing. And they're not filtering it. They're not pretending. They're very happy to openly put up videos of themselves celebrating starving people in Gaza, celebrating blowing up schools and residential buildings and mosques. They're celebrating torturing the Palestinians that they're taking as prisoners. They're not pretending to do the opposite. They're celebrating the idea of conquest. They want to resettle Gaza, all of these things. On the one hand, I know that Israeli society is fascistic and crazy. On the other hand, I'm still pretty shocked by just how, they're just, I don't even know what it is. It's it's Nazi-like behavior. And they're live streaming it and they're laughing about it. It's shocking behavior to see on such a collective scale among human beings. So I'm just curious, I keep asking people this question because I'm surprised. Have you been surprised by just how psychotic Israelis are behaving right now on video?
So yes and no. Yes, in the sense that I feel okay, they're not even trying to hide it anymore, right? I think there was a time, because I hear from sort of quote unquote liberal Israelis who talk about how, oh, well, yeah, the Palestinians deserve dignity too. But then it's they still think that Israel can exist and that's possible, right? And I guess, yeah, maybe those are the people that you can still have conversations with. But I think what shocked me is I think the degree to which people can be so openly pro-genocide. And I mean, quite, celebrating it. We've seen it. We've seen every possible horrible scenario take place, soldiers literally bragging about leveling Gaza and, there are no innocent Palestinians and all of that stuff. I think just the idea that it's not even hidden anymore and that no one even wants to hide it, it just goes to show how far the dehumanization of the other has truly gone, because I think that's really the thing that is just so difficult to watch, right? So I don't know. I mean, is it surprising? It's hard to say. At the same time, no. I mean, you can't kill 30,000 people without manufacturing consent and brainwashing people.
If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear the rest, you can access it by becoming a Breakthrough News member at patreon.com/breakthrough news.